Every single time you type a website into your browser and hit enter, there's this incredible hidden journey that happens in just milliseconds. Today, we're going to dive into the history of how your computer finds anything online, and it all starts with a simple text file that's actually older than the internet itself. Let's get into it.
So let me ask you this. Did you know that right now, on your machine, there's a file that's basically a fossil? It's a direct relic from the earliest days of networking, before the web even existed. It's a huge part of our story, and we're going to figure out what it is, and maybe more surprisingly, why it's still hanging around. Okay, so let's rewind the clock. Our story begins way back in the pre-internet days of the ARPANET. We're talking about the network's very first address book. This was the era of a simple, kind of brilliant, but ultimately broken file called hosts.txt. So what exactly was this hosts.txt file? Well, it was a simple text file that lived on every single computer connected to the network. Its job was super straightforward: act as a manual phone book. It just matched a human-friendly name, like stanford.edu, to its numerical IP address, which is the computer's real address. And this is what it actually looked like. Seriously, that's it. So simple, right? You've got one column for the IP address, another for the host name. So 23.45.67.90 pointed to stanford.edu, 23.45.67.90 was mit.edu, and so on. The crazy part? Every single computer on the entire network had to have its own identical copy of this whole list. So how did this thing even get updated? Well, it was a total pain. The Stanford Research Institute, or SRI, was in charge of the one single master copy. If you wanted to add a new computer to the network, you literally had to call them or send them a message. Then, it was up to everyone else to manually download the new version of the file, maybe once a day, maybe once a week. You can already see the cracks starting to form, right? And yeah, you can probably guess where this is headed. A manual system like that just cannot last. As the ARPANET started to grow and more computers joined, that little address book didn't just bend, it completely shattered. This was the problem of scale. Think about it like this for a second. Imagine your phone's contact list wasn't just yours. Imagine it was a single file shared by everybody on the planet. And every time someone got a new phone number, that file had to be updated and sent out to billions of people. It would be absolute chaos. And that's exactly what was happening to the network. The whole system was failing in three major ways. First, there were just too many hosts. The host.txt file got massive, and it took forever to download. Second, because the updates were manual, almost nobody ever had the latest version. And third, you started getting naming conflicts, where two different groups would accidentally try to use the same hostname, and there was no central referee to sort it out. The network was in trouble, and it needed a hero. And luckily, it got one. To fix the mess that hosts.txt had become, a totally new, brilliant approach was invented: the Domain Name System, or DNS. This was a much smarter system. So here's the quick history. By the early 1980s, it was painfully obvious that hosts.txt was a dead end. Then, in 1983, a computer scientist named Paul McCopatris proposed this revolutionary idea called the Domain Name System. By the middle of the 80s, it was being rolled out, and this one invention basically paved the way for the internet as we know it. The absolute game changer with DNS was the shift from one central file to a distributed system. Instead of one giant list, DNS is built like a tree, a hierarchy. Different organizations get to manage their own little piece of the address book. So Google handles everything under google.com, the folks in charge of .org domains handled their part, and so on. No one person or group controls the whole thing. Honestly, the best way to get it is this phone book analogy. Back in the hosts.txt days, it was like you had one giant physical phone book for the entire world. You had to find the numbers yourself and hope your copy was up to date. With DNS, it's like calling an operator. You just ask for a name, and they do all the hard work of finding the number for you, even if they have to ask a bunch of other operators to get it. It's automated, it's fast, and it's brilliant. So how does this whole operator system actually find an IP address in the real world? Let's walk through the modern, step-by-step journey that happens every single time you visit a website. All right, here we go. The journey of a DNS query. First, your computer takes a quick look in its own memory, its cache, and that old host's file, just in case. If it's not there, it asks what's called a recursive resolver. This is usually a server run by your internet provider or a public one, like 8.8.8.8.
That resolver then asks a root server, hey, who's in charge of the .com domains? The root server points it to the top-level domain, or TLD server. The resolver then asks that .com server, okay, where do I find google.com? That server points it to Google's own server, the authoritative name server. Finally, the resolver asks Google's server, what's the IP for www.google.com? It gets the IP address, sends it all the way back to your computer, and your browser can finally connect. All of that in a blink. Now that we've seen how it all works, let's clear up some common confusion. It's time for a little DNS myth-busting.
All right, let's go rapid fire. Common confusion number 1. Hosts.txt is gone. The clarification? Nope, it's still on your computer and you can use it for manual overrides. Myth 2. DNS is one giant server somewhere. Totally false. It's a distributed tree of thousands of servers all over the world. 3. 8.8.8.8 is the DNS. No, that's just Google's very popular public resolver. There are many others. And finally, DNS tells you who owns a domain. Actually, that's a different service called Whois.
So next time you just casually type in a URL and hit enter, take a second to appreciate it. You now know the incredible, invisible journey that connects you to the rest of the world, a journey that evolved from a single text file into a global masterpiece of engineering. And to finish up, I have a question for all the developers watching. Since we know that trusty old host file is still sitting on our machines, what's the most clever or useful way you've used it? Maybe for local development, pointing a production domain to your local host, or maybe blocking distracting websites. Drop your best tips and tricks in the comments below. I'd love to see them. Thanks for watching.